live call-in program where you, the citizens of Grand Rapids, can ask your mayor about local issues. With Community Media Center, I'm Linda Galash. Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss is live in a number of city-related topics that will take your questions later in the show. Today, we're going to give a retrospective look at this past weekend's Grand Rapids Neighborhood Summit, the 4th annual, actually, with one of the coordinators for the 4th annual event, city staffer Stacy Stout. She'll be in the studio for a conversation with the mayor a little bit later in the show. You will have opportunity to take part in the live conversation in the second half of the hour. You can do that by calling 616-459-4881. You can email cityconnection@grcmc.org or send your tweets to GRTV Access. Facebook's the same, GRTV on the Facebook page. You can also make comments there. City Connection is broadcasting live today, March 5th, 2018 on Community Media Center's television station GRTV LiveWire, as well as at therapidian.org. And now in the Community Media Center television studio with me is Mayor Rosalind Bliss. Welcome to the March show.
Yeah, thank you. Happy spring, although it's not here just yet.
It's getting better every day with daylight savings next week. It'll look different even.
Indeed, that's right. It's next week.
Already.
Wow.
Well, coming off a busy weekend, and you're going to talk to Stacy a little bit about that, but there was the Neighborhood Summit right after another flood here in the Grand Rapids area. Spring does that. Lots of rain and lots of snow melt. How did things go this time compared to, was it 2013?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It was earlier this year. So in 2013, it was April. And this year we experienced it obviously in February. Yes, I should back up and say I'm excited that Stacy Stout is with us today because I was at the summit on Saturday and it was absolutely amazing. So I can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, let's talk about the flood. So I'm sure many of the individuals watching experienced and saw what we had happening here in the city, but really throughout the region and county. And there are some cities and communities throughout the county who are actually still struggling with getting everything taken care of and fixing things after the flood. But here in the heart of the city, we actually fared pretty well. So as you said, back in 2013, we had a significant flood. And from that, we were able to do an assessment and an evaluation afterwards, and we were able to identify where we had weaknesses in some of our flood walls, where we had some of the challenges. If you remember in 2013, we were really concerned about our wastewater treatment facility. So we had sandbagged it at that time. After the 2013 flood, we took a number of steps to fix the areas of our flood walls where we saw weaknesses. We also did an evaluation at our wastewater treatment facility. We built a berm there, and we just did a number of other things at lift stations. And over the last 4 years, we've made continued investments in our infrastructure, including our underground infrastructure. And that teed us up to handle this flood much better than we did in 2013.
So what exactly, I mean, you talked a little bit about the berm, but the big picture was just south of Michigan Street Bridge where the water rose so high. What changed there? And since we were within a foot of that flood stage?
Yeah, it's really a number of things. We completed, in the last 5 years, we completely completed our sewer separation. And so stormwater doesn't pool with wastewater and create overcapacity. But then just the additional infrastructure work that we've done that allows us to handle greater capacity of water. But the flood walls were significant. So the investments we've made in flood walls was really significant. I mean, we did have to shut down a few streets. We closed down the bridges. We closed off the river. That was really for our safety reasons. We worked very closely with the emergency team at the county. So we have a county-wide emergency response team. And we worked really closely with them to monitor really every hour flooding, where we needed to respond, what we needed to close down. The county ended up calling a state of emergency. We did not, and I think that's really telling about how prepared we were and how the investments we made really just created a scenario where we didn't have the significant damage we had back in 2013.
So maybe for a little bit of education and history, 2013 was historic heights.
Yes.
This one not that far from it. What's going on that within 5 years, it's twice at that level? There's a number of factors, I'm sure, with building and paving and concrete and things like that, but what's the history, what's the education on this?
Yeah, so every time it floods, I think we learn. I mean, even this flood that we just had, we're going through a debriefing process right now and looking at what can we do to make any improvements we need to, and we know that we'll have another flood down the road at some point in time, and so just learning from these experiences and then making improvements so that next time we're even more prepared. And I think that's really the history. But I mean, if you look at the entire history and you look at the investment that's been made over the last even 30 years, it's pretty substantial. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars separating our sewers. So we have a completely separated sewer system. We have invested tens of millions of dollars in flood walls. We have identified, areas that we need to fill and fix. We've looked at our Lake Michigan filtration, or not Lake Michigan filtration, but our filtration pumps. But we've also done a lot of investment into green infrastructure. So we're looking at Lake Mary Waters. We did a lot of capturing the water right there on site. So we're building green infrastructure throughout the city and parks. Every single one of those investments help when it's flooding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots to learn each time. It's a little bit different, I take it.
Well, and I want to say our fire chief was amazing. So he took the lead at the city. We had an incredible team of city staff out there working every single day. They worked overtime, they worked all weekend. And then we had our partners at the county. And truly, without the people doing the work and who are on site every minute, we probably wouldn't have done as well. So I give a huge shout out to all the people who are working pretty much nonstop for about a week, making sure that we are in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update on that. Yeah. A busy week, lots going on, including it's a regular commission meeting tomorrow night, but uniquely it's one of those held in the neighborhood. So commission night out tomorrow night.
Yeah. So we have 3 commission meetings a year, every quarter. We rotate around to the different wards, and we do 2 things. One, we're out in the community at a different location for our actual meeting at 7, but the hour before that, we do a city open house. So anyone is welcome to attend and join us. And then we have tables set up throughout the space with different information about different city services. People can ask questions, sign up, they can learn about serving on a board or commission. And so we try to make it more like an open house feel before the meeting at 7 o'clock.
So this one's at Oakdale Park Church, and you said actually beginning at 6 rather than 7, the meeting at 7. So tell me a little bit about the purposes, some of these informational opportunities in the open house beforehand, but more community, more citizen participation than during the meeting as well, or what's the results? Yeah,
so typically at our commission night out, we have more individuals attend the meeting. So typically we have a larger turnout, although we've had significant turnout at our city commission meetings at City Hall as well. But most often our commission night out, we're out in the community where people are living in neighborhoods, and people are often more comfortable going to those commission night out meetings. If they don't want to get all the way downtown for a 7 p.m. commission meeting, typically when we're out in the neighborhoods, we just have more people show up, which is nice. That's why it was probably about a year ago we started adding this hour beforehand, just to provide information to individuals, give city staff an opportunity to connect with neighbors and talk to neighbors. And so we really use it as just a time to connect and provide information, and it's worked out really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of tomorrow night's meeting, I think I understood that there's something on the agenda having to do with the police department submitting a 3-year strategic plan. And although it's not submitted yet, you haven't seen it yet, a little bit about what prompted that. Is it part of a a new initiative, or what's happening?
Yeah, so the strategic planning process, actually, we do a lot of it at the city. Both our fire department is accredited. Our police department is going through accreditation, and having a strategic plan is part of accreditation. And so, yeah, those are important processes where we look at, again, what are we doing today? What are we doing really well? What do we need to improve? And what's our plan to get there? And so, yes, we'll be sharing that, and I'm sure taking input on what the plan is.
Okay, and then follow that up with Wednesday, a pretty big meeting that night. This one's the Police Policy and Procedure Review Task Force.
Yeah, this is an important one. So we've talked about this before. It was probably about 7 months ago we created a Police Policy and Procedure Review Task Force made up of community members and police officers from our department. We're contracting with a firm and a team, really, of experts through 21st Century Policing, and they're working with us on this process. It's being led through our police department and city attorney's office. Every single month, the task force gets together, and they're actively working to review policies and procedures. And then every 3 months, there's going to be an update to the community and an opportunity to give feedback. So we had one 3 months ago, our very first one, and our second one is this Wednesday. So Wednesday night at 7 o'clock downtown at the library. And we're
televised as well, or just recorded?
I think it's recorded.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I should probably know that. I know it will be recorded.
That gentleman right there knows.
Oh, good. It'll be streamed. Thank you. Good. But we're going to set it up a little bit differently than last time. Some of the feedback we got last time was that people wanted more opportunity to ask questions and have more of a dialogue. So we'll provide the update, and then we're going to get into smaller groups with individuals from the task force with smaller groups, so that they can have more of, just where it can be more interactive and greater dialogue. So we'll see. I'm hopeful that the process tomorrow, people like that process better than the one we had last time, which was more of a report out and then a microphone where people could come up and ask questions and give feedback. So it was a little less intimate, I would say. And so we're going to try this format tomorrow night, or Wednesday night, I should say, and hopefully it'll be a more productive meeting. Okay, so then a task force member will be available to sit around the table with citizens. And how big is the task force? So there are 7 community members, 15, and then so we try to make it balanced between community members and police officers, and then we have officers from every rank, as well as the deputy chief and the chief. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a busy week for sure. It's a busy week. And then tonight we have at 7, so after this, I'll be heading back to City Hall, because tonight at 7 we have a gathering at City Hall in the Commission Chambers from 7 to 9, where we'll have a team here from ACLEA, which is the accreditation body that's working with our police department to go through accreditation, and they are going to be here to get input from the community on the accreditation process with the police department. So that's tonight. Okay, and then a quick update on where things stand in the search for a new city manager for Grand Rapids. Yeah, thank you for asking that. So the City Commission, at our last meeting, we decided to terminate the contract with GovHR, which was the consulting firm that we used through this last process and round. And so after hearing feedback from the community, but also really wanting to take a fresh look at the process, we decided to terminate that contract, and we went back and reviewed proposals that came in from the RFP process last year. And so tomorrow at our commission meeting, we'll be talking about moving forward with a contract with a new firm. Okay, and then no doubt the funding for the first round, it was probably a pretty penny there, and doing it again, but committed to the idea of getting the right person in the position. Yeah, so first round, with the contract for the consultant, some leadership assessments, and then travel, we allocated roughly $52,000 for the process. And once all the bills are paid, will probably come out about $32,000. So we didn't spend the full amount that we allocated, so we still have $20,000 allocated from the last process that we didn't use, which is good. Will we need to spend a little more than that? Yes, but hopefully not substantially more. Okay, thanks for that update. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and you'll be back and talking with Stacy Stout a little bit about the neighborhood summit that just happened this past Saturday. We'll be back after the break here on GRTV's LiveWire channel 24.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
All right, welcome back. I am really happy to have with me Stacy Stout, even though I feel like she should have the day off because she must be exhausted after doing the Neighborhood Summit this past weekend.
Yes.
So Stacy Stout has been with the city for a couple of years now, really takes the lead on all things neighborhood. In addition, well, I should say you do that in partnership with a lot of other people at the city.
Absolutely.
And we can talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Well, first, why don't we start before we go into the Neighborhood Summit, for people who don't know the you or the scope of your job, why don't you share a little bit about what you do at City Hall?
Yeah, so Stacy Stout, assistant to the city manager. Main bodies of work is really around the Neighborhood Match Fund, which is a year-round program to invest in resident leadership, which we can talk about later. But that's a huge body of work, $200 to $2,500 contracts with residents to do projects, and then managing all those contracts. The Neighborhood Summit, which I'm here today, which is a year-long process to get there. And then really a lot of my work, which is funded in part by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, is really how do we build neighborhood capacity, resident leadership, so they are organized and have voice and have the capacity to be involved with development conversations, with job conversations, and things like that.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll get into some of those specifics. But first, let's talk about the summit.
Okay.
So the Neighborhood Summit happened on Saturday.
Yes.
It was all day, kicked off at 8:30 in the morning.
Yes.
And this is our 4th annual Neighborhood Summit.
Yes.
On Saturday, hundreds of, I don't even know, probably what, 400 or 500?
Yes, we're like you said, I took the day off, so we didn't go through the list yet. We had about 450 folks register, adults register, plus we had about 40 children in Kids Summit, so the 5 to 12-year-olds, and then another 25 children aged 2 to 4 in childcare. Yeah. Plus we had a lot of people just sign up on site. So,
which was great.
Yeah.
So the day was amazing.
Yes.
I was able to help kick it off in the morning, and there was incredible energy and excitement, and it really carried out throughout the day. So why don't you talk a little bit about the summit?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you, Mayor, for starting this 4 years ago when you were then a commissioner, and it's just a great, the spirit of it is really stronger neighborhoods make stronger cities, and so the whole day is really around how do we get neighbors to get to know neighbors, and so we're really intentional around that. How do we help neighbors and residents and stakeholders of different neighborhoods know key skills and just awareness of the different opportunities and resources out there. So there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of networking, and all for the spirit of making their neighborhoods stronger, whether it's with their business districts and hiring local and shopping local, and just making it makes the city stronger. So it's just, like you said, it's great energy from beginning to end, right up until the very end. Everyone's still clapping and cheering and just really excited to get to know each other.
So the day was,
Yes.
they started off with a keynote speaker.
Yes.
And then you had 3 different breakout sessions.
Yes.
So one in the morning, then we were able to come together at lunch and sit with neighbors and talk about issues.
Yes.
And then there were 2 breakout sessions in the afternoon. I think you must have had like 25 different topics and speakers.
Yes, sometimes even more.
It was hard to pick which ones to go to. I was like, oh, there's so many I want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had about 27 different workshops, and some of those workshops actually were panels or multi-speakers. There's so many topics, it was hard to say no. I think next year we're going to have fewer workshops because there is so many to choose from, and people really want to get a lot of the different learning. So what was really interesting, we do evaluations every year at this event, and we do listen to those evaluations. We go through them. Actually, tomorrow we're going to have a deep dive and debrief of them. So this year we had something different. Like you mentioned over the lunchtime, people wanted to know who were their neighbors. They knew if they were a GR resident or not because they had the ribbons on their name tags. But so what we did is broke it down by wards at lunch tables and had these community tables where they can get together with their commissioners and their neighborhood associations and have those conversations. So yeah, it was a full day. Dr. Rashida Weaver, she does community entrepreneurialism, and her message was like, we need to believe in ourselves that we can do it, and when we get to the tables that we have something to bring to the table, so we should speak up. And so she really kicked us off with some motivation, you and her. The workshops, the lunch activities to get to know each other, information tables. I think we had 15 different information tables just to get resources in the hands of our residents. 2 more sets of workshops, and then closing remarks. And Dr. Bill Pink from GRCC is a good partner to us. He was phenomenal. And then we also had a raffle. And so I really want to acknowledge the local business community that donated all these different gift baskets, gift cards, so we can have some fun at the end as well. So it was just a full day of activities and learning. It was really powerful.
Yeah, it was great. And the location was different this year.
Yes.
So we, a few years ago, we were at Grand Rapids Public Schools, and then last year at CC, and this year at Grand Valley.
Yeah, so the Division of Inclusion and Equity, I think that's it, Inclusion and Equity, Jesse Bernal and President Hawes, they were excited to host us today and gave us this great space. And the space really helped, I think, with the energy because people could see each other. It was a larger space. They could flow freely. The music was playing in the background. So the environment, free parking is always nice too, but it's also on bus lines. So it's just really accessible in a lot of different ways, also ADA compliant and more. So the flow was good, and DRCC was a good sponsor as well with our tumblers that we had.
Yes, I have one in my office.
But it was so great to see people open up their registration bag and get this tumbler, and they were just holding it like, oh, this is so nice. So GRCC contributed, Grand Valley with the space and the food, which is a huge contribution, and just all the sponsors that we had. They just stepped right up, and they actually, a lot of them were new sponsors that reached out to us to say, hey, how do we be a part of Summit? So that was really special.
Yeah. It was great. And then you had a kids summit, which was my favorite because I got to go spend time with the kids.
Yes, so this is our 2nd year of Kids Summit, and that is another way to make this event even more accessible. So a few years ago, we moved it to a Saturday, and then we added childcare, and we added the Kids Summit for the 5 to 12-year-olds. We wanted to be very intentional that this was a summit for them because they are leaders, not just of tomorrow, but of today. If you listen to children, they are very wise. They have a lot to say. And so Erica Soto, she is our Childcare and Kids Summit coordinator. She's a volunteer. She coordinated just an amazing day of activities, and the community really stepped up to help out. The Grand Rapids Symphony, they had us go watch the performance of Green Eggs and Ham, and ahead of time we had books for the children, and all their musicians signed the books, autographed the book. So every child went home with an autographed book about the musicians after they've seen the performance. The Children's Museum came in and did fun learning activities. We had a magician. We just, a lot of reading. You read to them, which my daughter still is talking about. So thank you.
You're welcome. And you're right, kids are very honest because I got some great questions and feedback.
Yeah, I love children. And it was, a good evaluation for Kids Summit is I went to go pick up, and I saw other parents picking up their children. They're like, can we stay a little longer? We're like, well, it's over. So that says something. And so the Kids Summit is really an event in and itself. And it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And we had so many parents just thank us because they wouldn't be able to attend if it wasn't for Kids Summit or childcare. And so again, we just try to remove as many barriers as possible. I mean, that's one of the reasons we have it on a Saturday too. is because we want access for all.
So glad it was moved to Saturday. First year we did it was on a Friday.
Yes.
And so I'm glad it's been moved to a Saturday.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I also want to note too, though, community partners, they really helped get folks registered because our registration is online, but we know the digital divide is real. And so we had amazing community partners. We're like, we're committed to getting 20 of our residents registered and calling them and reminding them. And then GRPS, of course, they're amazing, stepped up and they're like, well, we'll offer a bus to make sure that folks get here. And so we had our community engagement coordinator, Elizabeth Rogers-Druard, coordinate that as well. And it was just really important.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was such a great mix of folks too. I went to a couple of the workshops I was in. I facilitated one or moderated a panel. And there were, even from our business community, there were a lot of small business owners there.
Yes.
Neighborhood organizations, nonprofit organizations, neighbors.
Yes.
It was great.
It was very diverse in terms of stakeholders. So we had a lot of residents, we had a lot of stakeholders like business owners, and we were intentional to reach out to the different groups. Yeah. But also age diversity was really powerful, race, ethnicity, well represented across the 3 wards.
Yeah.
So it was just really great to see all this people come together and energized. And at the end of the day, when we had the community celebration, for them to continue talking and mixing with each other, it was just really, I keep saying powerful and just good energy, but that's what I can think of right now.
Yeah.
So it
was.
was.
Well, it was.
Yeah.
And it was definitely good energy after lunch when I saw everyone outside doing yoga. Oh. What a great addition to the day.
That came from the evaluations because we're in these workshops and some of the workshops are heavy, right? We're talking about like racial justice and how to be an ally. And they're like, that's a lot to debrief. You're like, sometimes we just got to get some fresh air. And I'm like, okay, well, we can do that in the courtyard. And so we had David D. Hunting, YMCA came through and they're like, we'll do stretching in the courtyard for everyone. So thank you.
That was great. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. So any thoughts about next year's summit? Are you already gearing up for that? Or are you going to take a little break?
We don't take much of a break. Yeah, we're going to debrief this week, and then we start planning next month. What was really special is a lot of people are like, we'd love to be on the leadership team. How can we help you plan this? So I guess the only add is just to thank everyone that was involved, not the sponsors, volunteers, and some folks, even the workshop speakers, they're like, I'm between workshops, do you need any help? I can help. And so people that came not expecting to volunteer, they're like, we'll volunteer, yeah, we're here, let's help. Yeah. And so it was truly a community, putting on a community event. It was really special to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, we only have a minute left, so I think that's a good way to end, is to say thank you.
Yes.
I said this on Saturday and I'll say it again.
Yes.
A lot of time goes into planning the summit.
Yes.
A lot of work, a lot of energy. I think those of us who attend, we have no idea how much time went into making the day such a success.
Yes.
Whether it's from the sponsors to the volunteers to your leadership. I know we had a lot of city staff there as well. So I just want to add my thanks to everyone who helped make it a success. It's I have to tell you, every year I go, it gets better and it just warms my heart. It's such a great day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
A community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers and her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply, meals are shared, a stronger local food economy is built.
Welcome back to City Connection here on GRTV's LiveWire Channel 24. Mayor Bliss visiting with Stacy Stout about the neighborhood summit this past Saturday, and very exciting stuff. You downloaded a lot of information. That was great, but I do have maybe just one final question, and now that we're through 4 years of this, how do you feel your city, our city, changing, its personality changing with this neighborhood capacity building?
What I think I'm seeing is a lot more organic organizing, a lot more support both of the neighborhood associations, but folks saying, hey, I want to get involved directly as well, whether it's showing up to city commission meetings, people knowing more information on how to access to be on a board and commission with the city, knowing what departments do what, knowing about development and community engagement around there. So I feel like people, they know more information because of Summit. We have these workshops, very intentional, and they're using that to get involved. So I feel like I'm seeing a more community engagement on the community's end. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add with that, but that's what I'm feeling, the changes. And different conversations as well. I feel like groups in the community are having more crucial conversations like, what do we want as a community? How do we get more residents to speak for themselves, not just go through another entity? So that's what I'm hearing and seeing, which is exciting. Yeah, very exciting.
So you're more interactive, more citizen participation. Are you, Mayor, maybe even starting to see more applicants for the many boards and committees that are out there?
Yeah. I would say that we are. And one other thought about how the summit has evolved over time. So I was involved with organizing the first summit, and it really came from an idea. I had seen that there was a summit in another city, and I'm like, we need to do this. This is a great way to talk about the importance of neighborhoods and spend a day focusing on best practices and what we can do to strengthen neighborhoods. And the very first year, it was myself and then a number of community members. But it was largely kind of driven by the city. The city came in as a significant sponsor the first year, and Grand Rapids Public Schools. I mean, it was kind of a joint effort between GRPS and the city. And then after the first year, those of us around the table, myself included, said now it needs to belong to and be owned by the community. And we'll still be here in a supportive role to help make it happen. But now let's have it be driven by the community. And I see it as almost entirely driven by the community now. Like the city staff is there as support, and we're there to help with logistics, but the content and the topics, it's really driven by the community, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, a lot of the community, the residents actually, because we believe in the resident voice, that's actually one of the values of Summit. A lot of the workshop presenters are residents, and so it's neighbors learning from their neighbors, which is really powerful as well, to be really rooted in community and by community.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. You mentioned earlier in there, when you two were talking, a little bit about the neighborhood matching grants and that whole effort. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, do you want to talk about it?
I do, I could talk about it all day, yes. It's a neighborhood match fund. They're actually contracts that we contract with residents. We believe and we know that residents are experts of their experience, of their block, of their neighborhoods, and so we contract with local experts, residents, to do community development in their area. So that could look like a lot of different things depending on what their neighbors want and need. It could be anywhere from we need to organize a block club, and to do that we want to kick it off with a block party. It can be, wow, there's such rich history here, we want to do some kind of historical mural and capture the residents here. you know, their image and their stories and put it up on murals, so it could be art. We've had community gardens. But the key to whatever the project is the means to the end. The end is, how can we get neighbors to get to know neighbors so they can build that social capital, so we can identify resident leaders? Because so often, you know, there's a board, commission, or maybe even a nonprofit or a corporate board. They're like, we don't know anyone in the area, but I have a whole list of resident leaders, right, that I can share with them. So it's part of also not just identifying resident leaders, but really changing the narrative. Like, there are leaders in this space, right? You don't have to have a bunch of letters behind your name and have certain titles. You are a leader and an expert. And so reclaiming that narrative, telling that story. And so we give out contracts, $200 to $2,500 for them to do something. And like I said, there's all kinds of examples on the website.
But do share some specifics. I would like to hear.
Yeah, okay, so I have so many favorites. So I love all of them, so I'm not picking favorites. So one we just got, was called Shovel Works. There's this gentleman in the Baxter neighborhood that has been shoveling walkways and sidewalks for those that aren't able to do it themselves. One, so they're safe, but also within code compliance, right? So maybe they have a disability, or they're elder, or they just can't get out there right now. So he's been doing this, and to make it more efficient so he can serve more folks, and also with Michigan, sometimes you have to do this twice a day, right? He put together a proposal for a snowblower, and he's going to do that. And you should see the video that he shared, and it's just him being him. He's just like, it's the right thing to do. We want to help our neighbors. And then he videotaped the neighbors that he serves, just saying like how meaningful this is, you know. So that's an example of Shovel Works. And there's also one on the west side as well, similar thing, to help people have access to sidewalks and to wherever those sidewalks bring them. The mural, the West Leonard mural, which is beautiful, very colorful, right there in Speedway on Leonard. It wasn't just the mural that we funded, it's the process of getting the neighbors together to capture their image. And I remember meeting a grandmother. She's like, look for my daughter, she's purple. And so I look for her granddaughter when you pass it, right? It's about bringing the community together. There was also one on the west side. The Kittigan Garden is with the Huron-Potawatomi Head Start for them to grow traditional foods and medicine. So it's an outdoor learning lab. So it's not just any old community garden, it's an outdoor learning lab. And then using the harvest as like a community meal with the neighbors surrounding the Head Start to build that community around the garden, around these amazing children. So those are a few of the examples. We've also had photo projects, taking photos of residents to capture who the residents are and putting them up as display as art within that neighborhood on Granville Avenue. And there's just so many more. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
So a cool thing, well, data points, we've given out, 32
contracts,
over
yes.
$60,000,
Yes.
$68,000 through a number of rounds. We have another round coming up.
Yes.
Which you should talk about.
Yes,
But, so one thing I love about when I was looking at the projects that have been funded is that a lot of them are youth-led.
Yes.
They're ideas from young people.
Yes.
And it's pretty impressive. It's powerful.
It is. So the photo project was also, there was some land that the Grand Rapidians Arts and Humanities owned, and some young people wanted to build a mini soccer field. So they did that. We had a group of 6th graders apply to do parent appreciation at Ford Academy for all their parents. Sweet. Yeah, we're like, of course, absolutely. So a lot of them are youth driven, and we're really excited for that because, like I said earlier segment, that youth are the future, not just of tomorrow, but of today. They're really smart. We should listen to them more.
Agreed.
So yes, we do have a round of openings actually right now on our website. You can submit ideas. Through the partnership with Public Agency out of WinCat, the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, we redesigned our process. And so now instead of typing out your whole proposal, you can just tell us your idea. You can type it out, or you can, and you type it out, the pitch is like you're in an elevator with the mayor. What would you say, what is your project quickly? Or you can make a video. And just a video of you talking about your project. And we've had a few submissions like the Shovel Works that I told you about earlier, and you can upload the video. So that's between right now, like today they can do that, through the end of the month, and then we'll let them know mid-April if the ideas have been approved, and then they would sit down with me and my staff and we'd help them figure out the scope of work. So often residents try to oversell it. They try to do 3 projects in one. I'm like, this one idea is worthy, it's great, like let's just focus on that. I mean, if you want to, that's fine, but and then we help figure out the budget, try to get them deals if we can get them deals. And then they start their project May 1st.
Okay.
So it's really exciting. It's a quick turnaround, and I really want to thank a lot of folks at City Hall, the Comptroller's Office, City Commission, Fiscal Services that really helped streamline this, because we know sometimes community happens right away. We can't know 9 months from now about a block party, right? So we really appreciate the city's commitment to that. So yeah, we encourage folks to submit their idea right away.
And then a year to complete, or what's?
3 months to complete. Okay. Their project can last longer. We just ask that they spend our funds in 3 months if they can. If they need an extension, we can give them a 3-month extension. But we do it on a quarterly basis, just so I can keep everyone with a similar end date, so I can track all of these different contracts. So it's pretty exciting. But I wanted to also know another data point for, it's a 1-to-1 match. So for every dollar we give, they have to match it with like volunteer hours or in-kind donations or cash donations. But our community and our residents, again, leaders, are very resourceful. For every dollar we've given them, they've returned $2.95. So that's really, really powerful. And then of the money that we've given out, so far, 98.3% has been spent within the city of Grand Rapids. So they're also shopping local. So it's a great investment in residents and the community.
You also had mentioned, I was thinking about your data points earlier, and you said it's a grant that could be from $200 to $2,500. Is that the accurate parameter? When you name the number of grants you've given, or the funds you've allotted, and the number of dollars, it sounds like you're going on the higher end of that for the average.
I am, because often when I sit down with these individuals, I used to do program development, right? And so we wanted to do it nice. And a lot of times people feel they have to underbid, right? But we want them to have a quality project, and we want to invest in you. And so as we sit through, I was like, what about this? What about this? How about that? And we just start doing the budget together. And so they tend to be in the $2,000 to $2,500 range.
Very nice.
Which are always fun calls to make. Like, you didn't ask for enough. We need to figure this out.
I wish more grantees would do that.
But it's true. And they're always like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it. Okay, yeah, let's do this. And it just makes for a stronger project.
And it's great that it's not something that has to be under the umbrella of a nonprofit. It's just a community idea. And did you say the idea is as simple as neighbors connecting with neighbors in some sort of way? Is that really all it
It really is. And so it has to be intentional that they get to know that they're not just in the same space, but there's some interest, like there's some conversation going on. There's some kind of, they're getting to know each other. So that's really critical. So we'll ask a little bit more about that. We do ask that they're inclusive. So really look at the neighbors around you, make sure it's inclusive of everyone. And I think that's pretty much it, and that it's safe. And
we were really intentional when we started this, that we wanted it to be for anyone, that they didn't have to be a part of a nonprofit organization, because we know so many neighborhoods, it's driven by people, and they may not be connected to a nonprofit. And also believing that when you have a group of individuals who care about something, they can do amazing things with very little resource. So with a little bit of money, you can do amazing things.
Talk a little bit about how it all started. There had to be some seed money to start with. And
it started from Summit.
It started from Summit. Our very first year at Summit, we brought in a speaker. I had actually read his book a couple years earlier, Jim Dyer from Seattle. And Seattle years ago started a neighborhood matching fund. And they have great examples. And they've actually fluctuated in how much. I think at one point in time they funded it with like over $1 million. And so he was one of our keynote speakers at our one of our early summits. I think our very first one. And from that came the idea to start a neighborhood match fund, and then we pushed it forward at the City Commission, and then it included it in the budget. So it's a budget line item, and a couple things came from that summit. Another one was to hire somebody like a Stacy. So we heard really loud and clear from the community that they felt like there wasn't anyone at City Hall that was singularly focused on supporting neighborhoods. And so we ended up moving forward on adding Stacy's position, and then starting the Neighborhood Match Fund.
Very amazing.
Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts before we close out?
No, I really encourage folks to submit their ideas. Just really, it's easy, painless. Just submit, and then I look forward to reading them at the end of the month.
Exciting. Great. It's Stacy Stout, assistant to the city manager, and a number of other projects definitely come under that heading.
Yes.
So, thanks for joining us again here on City Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, then it's time for your questions. You can get ready by emailing cityconnection@grcmc.org or phone number 459-4881, and you can do it through Twitter, Facebook, and on the Rapidian. We'll be right back.
Why do local businesses spend their marketing dollars with Community Media Center? Because it's more than just passive advertising. It is an investment in the community that is eager to invest in you. The Community Media Center makes Grand Rapids vital. We collaborate with local businesses and support events in West Michigan. Inclusive. We amplify local voices that tell the diverse and ever-changing stories of our community. Creative. We encourage artists to showcase and expand their talents and to shape the look and sound of Grand Rapids. Marketing with the CMC will let our community know who you are and increase brand recognition for your business. At the end of the day, we are a resource that will keep you connected to the community. Share your message with diverse audiences by underwriting with WYCE, GRTV, Wealthy Theater, and the Rapidian. Join us in building a stronger community through media. Contact us at marketing@grcmc.org.
How do you build a greener city? Meet Mariah. Mariah cares about the environment in her neighborhood and wants to get the word out about an upcoming tree planting event at Congress School, organized by Friends of Grand Rapids Parks and Brewery Vivant. She knows thousands of people will find out about it if she publishes the story on the Rapidian. Meet John. John cares about the environment, but doesn't know what he can do locally to help. John's friends recommends he check the Rapidian for local events. John, like many other volunteers, finds Mariah's article and decides to go. Together, John, Mariah, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and Brewery Vivant help plant trees at their local neighborhood school playground. Community grows, beers are shared, a greener city is built.
Welcome back to City Connection. And again, we're into the part where you can participate, asking questions through Twitter. It's GRTV Access, through Facebook, GRTV's Facebook page, through our email, cityconnection@grcmc.org. Mayor, lots of great information on what's going on at the neighborhood level. Really exciting things there. And thinking of the neighborhood level of things, your other, there's probably many things that are near and dear to your heart. You mentioned this, but also housing. And I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about just housing initiatives and where things are with that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So tomorrow, I think we've talked about this in the past, but tomorrow on our commission agenda, we have an item to move forward in partnership with the Grand Rapids Housing Commission to start to set up the structure for the housing fund. So last year during the budget process, we set aside funding to create a affordable housing fund. We decided to partner with Grand Rapids Housing Commission to do that, so there will be a separate advisory board that oversees that process for when, the eligibility and requirements and how those dollars are allocated. And so that is on our agenda tomorrow. So that is one more piece that we've been working on for a long time. It feels like a year now. So I'm glad to see that move forward. And then once the structure is in place, then we'll move forward with appointing the body itself that will be overseeing the fund will be a joint. It'll be 4 individuals that are appointed by the City Commission and 4 from the Housing Commission. So it really, truly will be a partnership. And then we also set a public hearing for recommended zoning changes. So at a Planning Commission meeting, probably at least 5 or 6 weeks ago now, Planning Commission reviewed the zoning recommendations that came from the Housing Advisory Committee. They had a public hearing. They made some additional changes to the original recommendations. The City Commission reviewed those and set a public hearing for March 27th. So at our next, not tomorrow, at our meeting at the end of March, we'll have a formal public hearing at our 7 p.m. meeting on those 4 recommendations. It's only a public hearing. We're not going to be making any decisions that night. We're just going to be hearing from the public, and then it'll come back to us for consideration and discussion after the public hearing. So you can find all the information on the city website. We've already received a lot of feedback on those recommendations, as well as a lot of questions. So city staff right now are working on a FAQ, but also they're tracking the questions that people are posing, and they're going to start providing information electronically. It'll be on our website, but then we'll also get it out to the community and to our neighborhood groups through our neighborhood organizations as we pull together the information.
Can you talk a little bit about what some of those zoning changes might be? Yeah,
so there's 4 of them. I wish I would have brought them with me because I don't want to misspeak at all. You know, the big one is, so there's 4 of them. The big one that we're hearing about are accessory dwelling units. So right now you can apply to have an accessory dwelling unit. Some people call them granny flats or grandpa flats, or some people call them Fonzie flats because, you know, if you watched, Fonzie's had a place above the garage.
Right.
But basically it's an accessory dwelling unit, very often an apartment above a garage. Right now there's a process to go through to get approval, as well as some requirements for accessory dwelling units. So one of the zoning changes is not only to adjust those requirements, but also to allow an accessory dwelling unit by right and not just instead of through a special land use. And that is a concern to a number of folks that I've heard from, is taking away the opportunity for the neighbors and the neighborhood to weigh in when a request is made, and just allowing it by right. But there's more to it than that. You know, some of the changes, and like I said, they're pretty in depth. You know, changes the square footage of the accessory dwelling unit and what's allowed, and so there's some more detailed changes as well. And that's why it's really important to take a look at all of the recommendations, because some people have said to me, I'm fine with changing the square footage requirement or allowing 2 people to live in an accessory dwelling unit instead of, you know, 1 or a relative, but I'm not okay with it being a special land use and having it be by right. So it's issues like that people are wrestling with, as well as, you know, where do we allow greater density up next to a traditional business district going into a neighborhood, 0 lot line. So and they fall within these 4 categories. So if you go to the city website, you can take a look at them. We'll be getting an FAQ out there soon, hopefully within a week, and then we'll have a formal public hearing at our March 27th, I think I have the date right off the top of my head, City Commission meeting, and then it'll be after that the Commission will be talking about the recommendations.
Okay, sounds good. So you can weigh in right now, and you can also be a part of that actual public hearing opportunity on that.
You can email us, you can write us a letter, you can call our offices, or you can show up at the Commission meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll take a question now, and this one comes from Sherry, and it says, do we have any links between the recent floods and climate change? And kind of hinted at that earlier, or maybe that question, but what do we know?
Yeah, I mean, we are. I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you we're experiencing more extreme weather events throughout the country, including right here in Grand Rapids. I mean, we're even seeing it with with this winter, right? We have days that are freezing where it's snowing, and 5 days later it's 55 degrees. And so I am a believer in climate change. I believe that we as humans, as individuals, are contributing to it. And I do believe that it's contributing to these extreme weather changes and weather experiences that we're having, whether it's in the summer we're experiencing greater heat than we ever have before, or the winters we're having these extreme snowstorms, and then, you know, it's thawing and we're having warm weather, and then the flooding. But you look across the country and there's extreme weather events all over the place. And I believe that we do need to be prepared for greater flooding and more extreme weather moving forward.
All right,
Yeah.
good question from Sherry, appreciate that. Another thing I saw coming out of the city was an announcement that Grand Rapids has been chosen to go to the next stage for the Mayor's Challenge. Tell us more about that.
So this is exciting. So the Mayor's Challenge is a challenge that was started by Mayor Bloomberg through Bloomberg Philanthropies. So late last well, it was probably August of last year. Bloomberg Philanthropies put out what was called a Mayor's Challenge, where you could apply to potentially be selected to win to get a grant for over $1 million. And so over 300 cities applied, and the eligibility was this. You had to come up with a unique idea that's never been done before, that is tied to your community goals, so something that you're working on as a community, and that it needs to be something that other cities can replicate. And so over 300 cities throughout the United States applied. What we did, when I heard about the Mayor's Challenge, first off, you have to go in and you have to say that you're interested and that you plan to submit a proposal. And then we pulled together a community group. So I reached out to the folks over at Star Garden, and one Monday evening we spent several hours together with, I don't know, probably 45 community members and some other city commissioners, and we just talked about ideas. So I invited a whole host of people who are innovative, creative thinkers, and we just started really throwing out ideas. And then from that, we kind of pared down some ideas and had a smaller group of folks meet, and then Bloomberg Philanthropies sent someone here to Grand Rapids and spent a day with us to think through and flesh out our idea. And then we submitted our idea, and the idea is in order to become a data-driven city, where we're able to make decisions more quickly based on data. So to figure out, are we having an impact? But also to address more complex issues like affordable housing and racial equity. You need to have good data. And right now we don't. We rely on data largely from the census, ACS data, which is often several years old. So even right now, I'm looking at data on lead poisoning from 2016. I'm looking at data on racial disparities from 2014, 15, and 16. So the idea was, how do you get real-time data in order to inform decision making, so that, let's say you are doing something and it's not working, or you're not having an impact, how do you pivot, how do you change? And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. So what our proposal was, can we do a city-specific annual census that collects real concrete data that we can use, but also allow that data to be open. So we want to have it in an open portal where anyone in the community will have access to that information, so that they too can make better decisions. So an example, and you've heard me talk about this before, in our city we have 17 census tracts where we have double-digit unemployment. And at the city, not just at the city really, throughout the community, we have private sector partners stepping up, nonprofit organizations stepping up. But one of our goals is, what can we do to reduce the disparities that we see around economic opportunity and employment in these 17 census tracts? And so how do we do that in a really meaningful way, but have real-time data to see if we're actually making an impact, so that I don't have to wait 3 years to see if what we're doing right now, what we did last year, and what we're doing next year actually is having an impact.
Very exciting.
So it's very
advance
exciting.
to the next stage and waiting to hear some more.
So people always, and I've talked to you about this before, like, we need to be, especially in government, data-driven. And if you don't have good data to make decisions, you can, in my opinion, waste resources, and that's not fair to the taxpayer.
Okay.
So.
Mayor Rosalind Bliss, thanks for another information-packed City Connection. We'll be back next month, first Monday, 5 p.m. here on Community Media Center's GRTV LiveWire, Channel 24. With CMC, I'm Linda Galash.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were running out of time.